Welcome back to Peeling Back the Mask. I'm your host, Jason Davis. And today, I know it's been a while since I've posted anything. I've done a couple videos and podcasts, and I've just kind of later, after looking at them, decided, you know what, I'm not going to put that up. So, one of the reasons is because we're doing remodeling in the house. I think I mentioned it in the last podcast. So you may hear some background noise. But I was kind of reflecting on my life before and after my diagnosis and what it meant to me, the changes in my life. Drilling. I'll try and edit that out. And it's as well, you know, I have a lot of people on Instagram. Like I said, I'm not really much to spend a whole lot of time on myself. It's something I don't like doing. I'm a YouTube junkie, so. But yeah, sorry. I have a lot of people on Instagram that, and Facebook that really strongly identify with the sense of being alien on this planet. That it's really hard to identify with everyone else and just, you know, feel a part of everything, and there's a really high level of confusion. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Let's see if I can adjust this camera a little bit better. Yeah. So my life up to my diagnosis. I mentioned before, you know, a lot of things about my past. I'm going to try and focus specifically on how I felt growing up. You know, and that one of the problems as well when we're younger, you know, apart from the fact if there's any abuse or, you know, turmoil at home or whatever, and I had faced a lot of that, like the full checklist. So, you know, through all the developmental years, there are a lot of changes in your body, in your brain, in your thought processes, you know, hormones through puberty and adolescence up until 25 is when our brain is fully finished developing. So, you know, all through that time up until around 25 years old, our, you know, I could say a normal life, quote unquote, would be, you know, is hectic, it's difficult, it's confusing, but for me, I think I walked around in kind of a daze because so many things happened that I couldn't wrap my head around. Like I couldn't understand the how or the why. And, you know, the few times where I did actually ask why, I couldn't get an answer. And as well, part of the problem is that I was labeled as a difficult kid. I was labeled as not as intelligent as the rest of my classmates, which turned out to be completely wrong. And so I spent a lot of years in my youth, up until 25, with therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and that has a very distinct and profound effect on a child, because while it can help them, basically what you're implying to that child, if you don't say it outright, is that we think there's something wrong with you, so you need to go talk to this person to figure out why. And, I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. It was the other people. And that was one of the really frustrating and infuriating parts, was that I would get bullied to the point that I would explode, I would react violently and beat somebody up. And then it was my fault. But when nobody wanted to listen to the why, these 4 or 5 kids were bullying me for an hour, and the only way I knew how to defend myself was by fighting back. Because I simply didn't have the words to be able to fight back verbally and insult them as well. And so that was always really confusing to me, and it still is, because in society today, you see it all the time, is that what's important is the outcome, not the reason why. And I've even had this case in mathematics where I was presented with an equation to solve. I solved it correctly, but it was marked wrong because I did it the wrong way. So how could I have done it the wrong way if I got the correct answer? To me, that's semantics. But it's like I guess in that case with the mathematics, it's almost backwards. But there's this flip-flop in society where, in a lot of situations, it's like, okay, well, you did this. It's the end result. And then you try to explain, okay, well, blah, 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 all of this happened for me to get to that point, for this to happen. And it's like discarded. And it's far more important, in my mind, to know how things got there than as to the actual end part, because that's like not telling the whole story before you tell the end of the story, right? Like it's pretty stupid, in my opinion. So that was always something that was really confusing to me, was I would be taken to a psychologist, psychiatrist, and they would be like, well, what's the problem? Well, I'm being bullied in school. I'm having the crap kicked out of me at home. My teachers are even abusing me. Like, where do you want to start? But they would just disregard all of that and say, no, let's focus on you. I'm like, well, where do you think my behavior is coming from in an environment like this? Like, I don't know, maybe in the 80s, psychology was not that great yet. I don't know, but maybe I just met some of the worst psychologists and psychiatrists that there were out there. However, well, I'll get to that later. So it was always me, right? Everyone pointing the finger at me saying, no, it's you that's the problem, you're the reason, la 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 la. And everything else was ignored. So throughout my childhood, sorry, I hope it isn't as loud on the speaker as it is in my ears. So if before all this I felt like I didn't belong here because I simply didn't understand how things worked. I didn't understand why they were doing these things and saying these things when I was always trying to be friendly and be friends and play, but I will never really understand bullying. I even, knowing the psychology of it and everything, and especially in children, it's kind of a way to kind of a pack leadership type of thing where the dominant are the popular, they are the cool kids, and the non-dominant are the nerds, are the geeks, are the ones who get bullied and isolated at school, pretty much on purpose. They get labeled and everything like that. So it was really, really difficult. And as well, around that time, when they started taking me to psychologists and psychiatrists, is when I started thinking about suicide. Because it really hit home to me that there was something wrong with me. Everyone was telling me there was something wrong with me. I knew that I didn't fit in. Like I would look around at everyone else around me and I couldn't comprehend anything that they were doing or the reasons for it, because I wasn't like that, right? And I understand there's, as a kid, sometimes you're still, learning empathy, learning, kind of how to understand things from other people's point of view. But I couldn't. I really couldn't put myself in their shoes because the things that they were doing were so purposefully mean or purposely malicious, purposely deceitful, right? And in my mind, I just wanted to be happy. I just wanted to make friends. I just wanted to play with the other kids. And no, it didn't happen. I was bullied basically wherever I went. And so my vision of the world in that time, you gotta remember, I grew up in a very small town of around 400 or 500 people in the southeast of British Columbia. And so my world was very small. It was a very close-knit community. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everything about everybody. which as well led to some really hard, even today, it's just, I don't know, a lot of things I have to kind of put down to the era that everything was happening. Because if I look at, 70s, 80s, in today's standards, as the way society is today, it can't fit, right? They're two different, very different time periods. But yeah, so because of all this, I heavily isolated. My vocabulary started to, not my vocabulary, my speech, I guess. I started talking less and less. I spent a lot of time reading, and I spent as much time as I could in the mountains. That's where I felt safe, I felt at home, and sometimes I would disappear for a couple of days, and since as early as I can remember, and nothing ever happened to me. And I was always able to find something to eat, whether it was berries, wild potatoes, onions, all kinds of stuff just growing around out there. It was, I was lucky it was plentiful. Go fishing and catch fish. Like my grandpa, luckily when I was very young, he taught me, how to fish, how to, well, I kind of figured out how to start a fire. That's not too hard. But just, knowing how to fish in an area full of rivers and creeks is enough to basically save your life if you need to survive. And I would walk around in the mountains. I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy books. And I would talk because I believed that there was a hidden world behind the human world. And I asked them to take me. So please take me from here. I don't belong here. I don't want to be here. Nobody wants me here. And I would beg for them to take me. I didn't want to be here. And it seemed like nobody wanted me there. One of the most confusing things for me ever when I was a kid is when I ran away, my parents would look for me. Why would you care what happens to a kid that you beat almost to death on a weekly basis? They would call the cops and have them out searching for me and everything. Like, why? I never understood that. And even then, when I was, 13, 14, they kicked me out of the house. I came home one day and all my stuff, not all my stuff, just barely enough to keep myself clothed, was sitting out on the front door. The doors were locked. And I was told in no uncertain terms that I didn't live there anymore and not to come back. So why didn't they just let me leave? So when you're used to everybody basically just abusing you over and over again wherever you go, it's really hard to trust. You know, your life experience at that age is just everybody wants to hurt me. Everybody knows I don't belong here. Everybody treats me as such, and they abuse me. And so eventually I was put into foster homes. I ran away from the foster homes because, as well, they were abusive. And even when I found a foster home that was, I guess, less abusive than all the others, they did this thing where they were nice to me and would buy me things, and then, you know, scream, yell, and throw things at me later. So again, that was really confusing it, because I was in that kind of limbo, you know, do they really care for me, or do they hate me, and you know, to live your life feeling or even knowing you don't belong. Well, feeling you don't belong, because we do belong here. It affects you in ways that take years for you to understand, if you're lucky, and if you have some help. And it damages everything. It damages all of your relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's with parental figures, whether it's with figures of authority, and girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. You know, your level of mistrust, or you know, that you have this very strong want and a hope that this person is going to accept you. But from past experience, you know that they aren't. And so as time kind of goes by, in a relationship, you kind of like, okay, this person's accepting me, everything's going well, and then, you know, they end the relationship, and it's like, no, it was all a lie. You know, that's the way I looked at it. It was all a lie. Like, so why did that person want to be with me and then not? You know, and I'm not talking a couple of weeks, I'm talking months. So, you know, and as well, a change, that sudden change was really difficult for me to handle. Change was difficult for me to handle. I ended up being in and out of, well, mostly in the juvenile care. From the time I was 16 till 18, I was in custody of the government. And during that time, before I was sentenced for a number of things, I was in kind of what they call like what was it called? I can't remember, but it was basically a family that that kids were sent to stay with, so that they didn't have to wait in the juvenile facility. They could be with the family, and it was an attempt to try and keep kids from getting corrupted by the juvenile system. And so like I said, I was 16, and it was a cattle ranch, and I really enjoyed it there. I really liked the family. My first hug in my life was at 16 years old. The lady that looked after us, she tried to give me a hug, and I tried to run. But she grabbed me. She said, "No, you're not going anywhere. Come here." She gave me a big hug, and I just burst out crying. That was kind of the first caring physical contact that I had, I guess you can say, without expectation. I guess when you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, that physical contact is almost expected because you're a couple, right? Holding hands, hugging, kissing, whatever, there's kind of a mutual expectation. And so even if in the moment you don't really kind of feel like it, you're kind of obligated to. And but when it's with a parental figure, that obligation isn't really there. At least it wasn't for me, because I didn't grow up with that kind of affection at all in my family. Quite the contrary. And so that was a very new experience to me. And it was, I think I cried so much thinking on it now, because in that moment I felt that she was saying, you know what, I don't care what you did, I don't care who you are. Well, not that I don't care, but I love you the way you are. I was being accepted for me as me. And it was kind of a changing point in my life, because I know that, well, for years before that, I was constantly trying to kill myself. And for one reason or another, I never succeeded. You know, when I think my first attempt was when I was 7 or 8. I tried to electrocute myself. Later, I tried to hang myself. Later, I put my head under the school bus, and just as it was about to go over my head, somebody, and to this day I have no idea who, because I didn't see anybody, they pulled me out. You know, and I just didn't want to suffer anymore. You know, and I never, you know, suicide is a form of desperation. A lot of people, you'll hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, suicide is a coward's way out." You have no idea how hard it is, and to what point you have to get to decide to take your own life. It's going against our very primal survival instinct. You literally have to fight against yourself in every way. You have to get to a point psychologically where you don't see any out. In my case, it was just, I'm going to keep being beaten. I'm going to keep suffering. I'm going to, keep feeling this way, that people don't want me, with all this proof, plenty of evidence for that. And, so if I continue living, I'm going to continue suffering. At least if I'm dead, all of this suffering goes away. Right? And maybe I can start anew, maybe I go to heaven, I don't know, but all I know in this moment is I don't want to suffer anymore. Right? You have to understand the level of suffering and desperation somebody has to get to decide to take their lives. Okay? It's not something anybody does lightly. And, you may hear, that the kids are doing it because they broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. There's a lot more going on there than just that relationship breakup. A lot more. But people judge that person. It's probably part of the reason why they decided to commit suicide in the first place. Because of the immediate event before. Rather than, again, like I said, rather than look at the whole story and try and figure out why this person was at that point. And that's how a lot of people get away with abuse. Because kids will kill themselves and nobody looks into the kind of the history of how that kid got to that point. If they did, then there would be a lot more people in jail for child abuse. And in my opinion, people who abuse children should be put to death. That's my opinion. They are the most despicable people on the planet. They are abusing physically and sexually children that are innocent, that have no idea what's going on in the world yet. They're still trying to figure it out. And parents and family are supposed to be there to guide them, to help them. And they do that shit? No. Fucking bullet in the head. Bullet in the head. Anybody who does anything to kids, I will fully support putting a bullet in their head. Save all the years in jail and all the taxpayers' money. Put a fucking bullet in their head. Be done with it. The world's too full of those types of people. Too full. But, sorry. So yeah, so I was with this family. I was for the first time in my life getting any kind of parental kind of affection. And they decided they wanted to adopt me. And social services said, no, you can't adopt this kid because he has a family. Regardless of the fact that I had been in the system for years because my family didn't want me. And so that was really devastating when that came down. I was absolutely devastated. And again, it reinforced a lot of things, that mainly social services doesn't care about the kids. My life would have been a lot different. I always say I would never go back and change things, because if I did, then I wouldn't be where I am right now. I'm married, I have a beautiful daughter, and, a lot of good things have happened. A lot of bad as well, but I see that as life. Everybody has bad in their life, so. Yeah, sorry, that a little emotional right now, so I'm kind of having a hard time thinking. Um, so yeah, when now again, this is when I was 16, so I was I'd gone through puberty, or was kind of I'd gone through puberty at that point, and when I was put into juvenile facilities, it made sense to me. The routine, the just the way everything was set out. You wake up at this time, you have breakfast at this time, you do this at this time, this at this time. Everything was laid out. And it was really the first time in my life where I had experience with concrete routines, and it was very comforting for me. As well, when I had first gone in to the juvenile system, I was looking after myself. I was struggling to find food and never knew where I was going to sleep, and worried about clothing and all that stuff. So, but being too young to work, and so I got in there and I was like, hey, this isn't so bad. It's better than where I was. And so because of that, I think I decided that I was going to fit in. I was going to act like the other kids because this place felt comfortable to me. And unfortunately, that kind of gave me a kind of a green light to be violent. Now, I could probably go through and analyze, the violence is part of the autism, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at my past, how I was raised, everything was solved with violence. There were never any consequences. My dad, cops never came to the house. Even when I ran away, one time they caught me, he had basically destroyed my face. My nose has been fixed since my brain surgery, but my nose was 13 degrees off to one side. He had broken both, what do you call them? Oh, the cheekbones on both sides were fractured. This was fractured up here. My lip was split up to my nose. I could barely even see. My jaw was fractured, and a couple of my teeth were all busted up. What else? I think that's about it. Yeah, basically, he destroyed my face, and I ran away, 2 days later, the cops caught me, and I said, I'm not going back there. And the cop said, why not? I said, because this is what happens to me when I'm there. And he said, your dad did that? I said, yeah. He said, well, I have to remember this was like 1980. Like 1983 and 1984, I think. Something like that. And he said, well, I can't do anything. That's a family issue. And later on, I looked it up, and the Family Protection Act wasn't put into place in law until a few years later. So up until that point, domestic issues were considered matters of the family, and the law couldn't get involved. They had no power. So he said, well, if your dad's here in less than, what did he say, like 3 hours, I'll give him a ticket. I'm like, well, gee, thanks. That'll teach him. So the consequences of everybody who had ever been violent to me was nothing. And for some reason, if I was violent, I was punished. And then when I was in an environment that was, full of violent kids, well, this is home. I guess I kind of felt like at that time I was in my element, because I was in a place for unwanted kids. A lot of the other kids in there were pretty much abandoned by their parents, abused, were in there for every type of crime you can imagine. And while, I did prefer to just be relaxed and, do what I had to do. We had a lot of time to do. We were taught crafts, handcrafts, and everything. Actually, I made my wallet there in a leathercraft class, and that wallet I've had till this day. It just started falling apart. So, I really enjoyed those things, but the second a kid started getting aggressive with me, I wouldn't say anything, I wouldn't give any warning, I would just unleash. Yeah, because I knew that if I didn't, then I was going to get the crap kicked out of me, and I was sick and tired of having the crap kicked out of me. And so that basically I made that decision that I wasn't going to be the victim of somebody else. I didn't realize that I was making victims of others by doing that, but in that environment, it's either you do or you're the victim. And it kind of served me well, because after a couple of fights, the other kids realize, even though I'm this scrawny little weird kid, I can fight, I can look after myself, so they decide to just leave me alone. And that suited me just fine. So, sorry, I'm starting to, go through every year of my life. It's going to take a long time. So yeah, let's try and shorten this up. So when you live in a world that doesn't make sense to you, that you can't relate to, that everything you see, hear, experience is confusing, it seems to have no rhyme or reason, like you can't catalog it as to, okay, well, they do this for this reason, because then in another similar situation, somebody will do something completely different, right? So it's really hard to kind of go, oh, okay, well, this is how they do this is why, la la la, because then in another similar situation, it's completely different. And granted, different people react differently to different situations, but when you're trying to make sense of the world you're living, and you don't really understand any of it, those incongruencies just kind of compound the difficulties of kind of developing the skills to be able to kind of interact and kind of thrive in society. So, in that aspect, okay, and this is the reason why I've said in some of my earlier podcasts that I've said it throughout as well, but that late diagnosed autistics, we've had to, by trial by fire, learn to get by in society. We've, you hear the term "fake it till you make it." Well, for us, it's fake it till you die, because the autistic diagnosis wasn't used until 1992 was the first time it was actually used as an official diagnosis. And even then, it was in what they considered extreme cases. And so it took a long time, up until the 2000s, maybe even after 2010, that the autism diagnosis developed to the point where it could be applied to adults, because they realized, there's a lot of people out there that, are in their 40s, 50s, that probably never diagnosed because of the time. And so now they have children, they take them for diagnosis because they go, my kid is struggling, and the doctor goes, you know what, this is genetic. This has a really strong genetic component, so, can you identify with these things as well? The parent goes, yeah. And there is when they find out they're autistic, as well as being an autistic parent. So, an autistic parent of an autistic kid, which I very firmly believe is a massive advantage for that child. If it was an environmental cause and none of the two parents were autistic, that kid would have a really hard time, as well as the parents. it was mind-blowing for me and world-changing in every aspect to find out that I was autistic. And I cried. I cried like I've never cried before in my life. I cried out of relief. I cried out of regret because my life would have been so much different had I known, had others known. Maybe not, but it would have been worse in that time. But I would like to think that it might have made my life a little bit easier, knowing. I cried for loss because I felt that if I had been diagnosed when I was younger, then I would have had more resources open to me to be able to help me in my cognitive therapy, speech therapy, whatever else I needed that there was. And that only ever happened with me with one psychologist. And while, again, at that time, the autistic diagnosis didn't exist, but by researching and seeing the kinds of tests they do on children to kind of help figure out if they have autism or not, that's exactly what he did with me. Right? He did all kinds of tests. I loved going with him. I loved it. I seriously loved it. I look forward to our weekly visits because he would give me puzzles. He would give me cognitive problems and it was like Disneyland for me. It was fantastic. I loved it. And, he told the lady that I was with, Lou, he told her, he said, he has absolutely no mental impairment. He is extremely intelligent. He needs an environment to be able to express his ideas, his creativity, because he in a regular classroom environment he won't get the attention or won't be able to how do you put it? It's like I kind of be forced into the learning patterns of the class. And this was shown years later when I was in high school. I was given free rein to do my grade 10 year. They told me, you know what, you do it at your pace, and when you want more, you come to me and I'll give you more. I finished my grade 10 year in 6 months. Of course, that didn't include, I did go to metal shop, art, and physical education, yeah. So, and I academically, I finished my grade 10 year in 6 months, and I had started doing my grade 11 year. They put me in grade 11 classes, and that's where everything went to hell. So, I think now looking back on everything, being autistic isn't a curse in any form. Where it becomes a curse is the time period in which you're living, or you lived. Because, now in the 21st century, we are so far advanced than from where we were 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I think that we've seen more advancement in worldwide in the last 30 or 40 years than in the previous 100, 200 years. It's just been ridiculous. Autism today, while still not fully understood, we have a lot more resources available, a lot more support available. Still, there's a lot of real kind of confusion and misunderstanding about how to, help or raise autistic children. And I think now when I look back on it, the best thing you can do for an autistic child is give them an open learning environment. Don't put them in a school where they have to conform to the learning speed of everyone else and to the topics of everyone else. You can put them into a class or into an environment where you let them learn at their speed, and they will surprise you. Because we have a really hard time kind of blocking out the rest of the environment around us. And schools are chaotic by nature. It's full of kids. So that would be extremely difficult for autistic kids, especially if they have auditory sensitivities, right? Cotton in the ears, at the least, because, that's not an environment for them. They have to learn, they got to survive. No. In the past, yeah. But today, no. There are so many resources for kids nowadays that don't conform to the, definition of normal, which I think is the stupidest definition ever. But anyway, and so a kid that is different from the rest is actually kind of a blessing. You take a look at the kids nowadays, they're not the brightest. They break easy. Everything hurts their feelings. Anyone who's over 40 years old, I think, looks on this society as, it's like, what the hell is wrong with you kids? Didn't you ever go outside and play? Didn't you just, play? No, they didn't. They've spent their childhood indoors, video games, TV, and cell phones. The greatest babysitters in the world. So, to have a kid that's different, that is interested in learning, that's interested in reading, that's interested in drawing, that's interested in music, rather than sitting on their cell phone or playing video games, that's a blessing. That's something you should be very happy and very proud of. A kid that learns things like you wouldn't believe, that absorbs information, that's something you should be proud of, and you should be You should be, what's the word? I don't know. You should be helping them, I guess, in simple terms. You should be helping them to explore all of that, all of their interests, everything, and to help them to advance that interest into something that can help them in a career, right? That they go to university, right? They study paleontology, archaeology, physics, science, psychology, psychiatry, medicine, whatever it is. You know, you should be thrilled that your child is just nuts over dinosaurs. You know, not like normal kids. Like they're just, you know, reading everything they can find on dinosaurs and paleontology, and you know, they know the size and the density of the bones of the T-Rex and how long it was and how many, you know, bumps they have on their back and the whole 9 yards. Like, you should be like, you know what? This kid's going to be awesome. They can be in, you know, paleontologist. But no, a lot of parents are just, I don't know, no, my kid's not normal. Congratulations, I would say. No, that's awesome. What do they like? Why do you say they're not normal? Right? Well, you should put them in dance. My daughter loves to dance. Loves to dance. She even started making up her own moves at 3 years old. She's got her own thing going, and you know, and every day she starts to dance and she comes up with a new move, and I'm gonna put her in dance classes and ballet or whatever she wants, because you know, if she wants to become a ballet dancer, if she wants to I don't know, become a choreographer, whatever she wants to. If that's her passion, then I'm going to support her 100% on that, and do everything I can so that she can, you know, live out that passion. Because nowadays, all I see is people dying with just dying inside. They have no passion for what they do in life. They do it to pay the bills. And I think that's basically what's killing society. We just sold out, basically, for, you know, again, it's understandable. I'm not saying, well, you dumb assholes. It's fully understandable, and I did it for a long time as well. But when I sat down, and my wife and I sat down, she said, you know, you really need to study something. You don't have any formal studies. I said, yeah, you know, I've never been able to financially. I've never in my life. She says, well, we'll put money aside, and whatever you want to study, we'll make it happen. And so, you know, I thought about it, and I've always been fascinated by psychology. So I told my wife I studied psychology, and I still want to go on and get a master's degree in clinical psychology or forensic psychology. I don't know. But I lost my train of thought. Yeah, it's important to follow your passion, not your dreams. Dreams are are generally fleeting things like, oh, my dream is to have a house on the beach. Okay, well, a mansion on the beach, probably not. But, a moderately priced house on the beach, sure. Maybe a really nice house on the beach in another country, you got to keep your options open if you want to really kind of follow your dreams. And I guess that's kind of my point in this, is that you need to analyze options not just in your immediate area or your immediate situation, but also in the future, and plan for them. Make them happen in one way or another. Well, we can't afford a house on the beach here in Los Angeles. Well, no, who can? Well, very rich. So we're never going to be able to have a house on the beach, but we really, really, really want a house on the beach. Okay, well, look somewhere else. Do you want a house on the beach, or do you want a house on the beach in Los Angeles? Those are two extremely different goals because of the prices. Right? So basically, you're dreaming to become rich first so that you can have a house on the beach. If you want a house on the beach that you can afford, Oregon, Washington, rains a lot, but you have a house on the beach, right? So, this kind of leads down to when you're thinking about your kids, whether they're autistic, ADHD, whatever. Be open to supporting their dreams, their passions. Sorry, not their dreams, their passions. See what they're passionate about, and help that grow so that they can grow up to be people that work in a job that they're passionate about, that they love. And I guess that's kind of if you're lucky enough to have parents that supported your passions and helped you to get to the point in life where you could actually work in what you're passionate about, I hope you hug them and you tell them you love them on a daily basis, because that is not something that everybody has. And after my diagnosis, it got rid of a lot of negative thoughts about myself. I was able to forgive myself for a lot of things. And I've found my passion for things again that I had lost, because when you go through your entire life feeling like you're an alien stranded on an alien planet, and you don't belong here, you don't understand anything, you just want to go home, that does a lot of damage to you psychologically. And when you find out why, it's like the mothership coming for you and saying, this is your purpose here. And with that information, it liberates us to become the people that we always should have been. You know, if maybe if we had known earlier, life would have been somewhat easier, more understandable, less painful. We would have been able to work more on our strengths rather than trying to work and fitting in. Just a plethora of things that, of course there are some things that wouldn't have changed, sensitivities, stimming, things like that basically we can't control, but are, advantageous. Stimming is an advantage. It's like the fan on your computer to cool down your CPU. We stim when we're starting to overheat, and so that stim is our way of turning on the fan to cool it down, which a lot of people, vast majority of people, don't do, and so they have to find other ways to deal with that stress, whereas we can do it in the moment, they have to do it later. So, advantage us. But yeah, anyway, sorry, I got a little more emotional on that than I thought I would. Kind of lost my train of thought a couple of times, but I'm going to upload it today. I'm not going to let it sit, because then I doubt it, and I end up not uploading it, and then it goes on and no uploads, and eventually people are just going to stop listening because I don't upload anything. So anyway, I hope maybe something in this episode today was helpful, was useful. Again, as always, you can find me on Facebook at Peeling Back the Mask, the official podcast page, Instagram at Peeling Back the Mask with underscores between the words, so peeling underscore back underscore the underscore and mask. And on YouTube, under Peeling Back the Mask, and Odyssey, as well as the Autistic Tuber. I found another, where did I put that? There's Rumble as well. I'm thinking of uploading on Rumble, as well as ThinkSpot. I found those two platforms. I really like Rumble. YouTube is just kind of really chaotic for me, although it does have a lot of content that I can't find on the others. So, but I do like the others as well, so I'm debating on uploading on those as well. But yeah, if you have any comments, suggestions, even just want to say hi, feel free to contact me, mostly on Instagram, and I'd be happy to receive anything from you guys and girls. 64% of my listening audience is female. So, you ladies, thank you very much. And I hope you're all doing well, and we'll see you next episode. Take care.